back to the channel and welcome back to my space. So I wanted to do a quick recap of everything that's gone down with the guitar so far. My first video on YouTube was about this guitar, and so I just want to go over, since then I've learned a lot. I learned a lot while I was working on it, and I've learned a lot trying to get it set up properly, because that has really been a lot more work than I envisioned. I sort of was afraid when I did the kit that it was going to be hard, and then I kind of got the thing going and was making some progress, and then setbacks would occur. So I want to just talk about the setbacks and just give you my opinion now of buying and building guitar kits, and what I think I will do next for my next project. Will I buy a kit or will I do something else? So that's what I want to get into. This is the BYOG Flying V guitar. It's no longer on their website. I'm assuming that there's been some kind of supply chain issue, or maybe they just weren't selling many of these and that's it. But I doubt it, because people like the Flying V body shapes and the Explorers. They're popular shapes. So I'm pretty sure they'll have one at some point. And also, I had noticed that this one had number 13 written on the body, on the neck pocket. And then I've seen other guitars on the neck and in the neck pocket of the body. And I've seen other guitars online for sale that were very similar to this. At least the body was similar. There might have been differences with, all the stuff that comes with the kit. But those number 13s are out there, so I'm pretty sure you could find one of these. And there are a lot of different companies that make similar Flying V kits. The reason I wanted it was because it came with, mahogany, like a Gibson. It was shaped like a Gibson, and I thought the neck looked good, and it really does. So the wood on these kits is A+. The frets were actually level. I like the engineered rosewood on it. I'm fine with that. It's some kind of pine meets solvents meets who knows what, sawdust, all jammed together. But it looks like ebony and plays absolutely fine. I would not hesitate to buy a guitar with engineered rosewood, and I like the fact that they're coming up with ways to use real wood and stuff without having to, use the woods that we're trying to preserve and whatnot. So the wood is good. Everything that came with the guitar, as far as like the electronics, were not very good. The pickups were just your typical cheap pickups. All of the stuff that came with the guitar I've replaced. The only thing left that I have not replaced are the tuners. And I was going to replace those when I had 11s on the guitar. Now that I have 10s on the guitar, more on that later. Now that I have 10s, I feel less of a urge to replace them. Because the reason I was going to replace them, I know they're junk and they're not great, and so you should replace them if tuners are a thing for you and you want locking tuners, or you just want some really good quality tuners, you have to replace them. But for me, tuners are usually okay. I use Squire tuners, never have a problem. These are fine. This low E, when I had the 11s on, I think that string was a 52. It was just getting sticky. Now that it's a normal gauge, I guess it's like a 46 maybe. I forgot the numbers on the 10 gauge, but it turns fine now. Feels good. And all the rest of them are good. And you can adjust these cheap tuners just like you can expensive tuners. They have these little screws on the side. So you can kind of adjust these, fine-tune them, and get them, to work better. For me, I like these open post tuners, not the split tuners, because I can utilize my stringing method that I use for trim guitars, which is on several of my videos. If you look at the Squire videos, I show you how to do that. And so I like this kind of post, and I like these kind of tuners. They look like Grover style tuners, and I know that Gato makes really good ones, and that's what I was going to replace them with. And I still might, because it'd be a good video. But I'm tired of putting money into this, because that's one of the things I want to discuss. All right, so all in, I spent $180 on the wood, on the kit. It was like $183. Then I've spent about $50 on the stain. So now you're into the 200 plus range, right? 230-ish, And it shipped, I think it was like $240, something like that. Well, that would be good. But now you're going to have to replace all of the electronics, because they're really, I don't think they're good enough. They're going to fall apart on you either. The wire seemed like it was a lighter gauge than I like to use. I usually use 22 gauge, and it looked like it was 20 gauge. 24 gauge. Which is a lighter. To me, it just gets so the wire gets so thin and light that any false move, like side-to-side movement, which happens with guitars, wire just snaps off the pot, so that's no good. The pickups looked like they were, cheap pickups that you could find anywhere, humbuckers. And the bridge was garbage. And I put a Duesenberg on. I replaced the jack. I replaced strap buttons even. Pretty much the only thing that came with the kit that is currently on the guitar is the body itself, the neck and the body. This truss rod cover, because I thought it looked kind of cool. It looks like kind of like a Jackson, just different, because this isn't a Gibson, so I didn't want to try to look like a Gibson with the pickguard. So I like this one, something different. And I like this pickguard here because you see more, wood and more face wood. You do start to chuck it up a bit if you don't have a pickguard here. But I like the way it sounds when there's no plastic between these humbuckers here. It sounds nice and clean. Clear, like real bell-like tones. So anyway, I love the way the guitar sounds, and I've gotten the guitar to play pretty well. Here are the things that have gone wrong that lead me to assess these types of kits for me, and just a little bit of advice for those that haven't purchased their kit yet and want to know more about building one. I wanted to replace the nut, so I ordered an upgraded nut. I removed the plastic nut, everything went well with that, and I replaced it with a tusk nut, the correct size that they sent, with the kit. So the first problem I had, once I got everything installed, I'd stained the guitar, drilled the necessary holes, done the electronics, everything was in place. Now it's down to like setup stuff, like installing the bridge, putting the Duesenberg on, beginning to string up, starting to experience those first moments of getting the guitar ready to play, ready to be set up. I knew right away the bridge was garbage, right? It had one of those retaining clips on the front, and and when you're holding them in your hand before you even install them, they're making noise. It's just not a very stable piece of kit. So I replaced it with a gato. But when I put the gato on, and I got my nut installed, the low E string was hopping out. I'd start playing and be like, hop out. And it's black. And I tell you what, that just freaks you out so bad. I can't imagine that happening during a show. That would really be a bummer. But you're like playing along, and it just jumps out. And it kind of startles me, it scares me a little bit. And it really freaks me out. And it happened a bunch of times. My wife was sitting there, she's like, what is that? And it's like freaky when it happens. It's annoying, and it like startles you, and it just bugs you. You're like, what in the heck, How? That's not supposed to happen. So that's really annoying. Then the other thing is I was jumping out down here, so I'm like going to do a bend on the 12th fret, And these are just hopping off the saddles, just jumping out. So it was just kind of a disaster. So being inexperienced, I don't have any real luthier skills. What I have is like persistence, obsessive drive, that kind of thing, real healthy. But I go nuts, and I'm kind of a perfectionist. I want things to sound a certain way. What I'm looking for is I don't want a bunch of noise. I play electric guitars acoustically a lot, and that's how I assess how well the guitar is operating. So I don't want to hear a bunch of... It's nice and quiet. You don't hear a bunch of buzz, That's what I'm looking for, all over the neck. And when I play open, I want it to sound clean and clear like that. And there might be a little bit of noise there, but overall, nice and clean and clear. That's what I'm looking for. I don't want to fret out anywhere. And I want it to intonate, I can't have a guitar where I can't play it down here. It's not going to work for recording. It's not going to work for live. I've seen guys talk about this online, have some kind of issue with a kit, and ultimately it'll make a great piece of wall art. And when I first saw that, I was like, oh, no. But I think that is a reality that, if anything is off, if these things are off a little bit, you might never get them intonated, especially these weirder guitars like the Flying V's and the Explorers and the Firebirds. I'm thinking of set neck builds, Gibson style builds. I'm assuming that they might be a little trickier to make a kit out of, especially a Flying V, than it would be like, say, a Stratocaster, like a Partscaster. That's probably a lot easier and more reliable thing to replicate time and time again if you're building kits. I would assume this is a bigger challenge. Here's the thing that I started noticing. So the string is jumping out of the nut, right? Which is unacceptable, is driving me completely crazy. So since I didn't have a lot of experience and I didn't fully understand the relationship between the truss rod and the neck adjustment, the bridge placement, and finally the nut, I didn't understand how all of those sort of work together, and you sort of have to tweak each one a little at a time until you get to a satisfactory point where everything sort of converges and works. So my solution, grabbed my file and start carving away. I figure, well, if the string is jumping out, it just needs to get lower in the tracks, right? Which is true, it works. But now the string is so low to the fretboard, that it rattles and it makes noise. And you know that it's not right. The rest of your strings are sitting correctly in the nut. You look over at this one, it's sunk down, and you know it's only because something is going on here that's making the string jump out. And then down here, I hacked away at the bridge to make these strings stay in. So now I've got like a hack guitar that won't fully intonate, and it makes noises every once in a while, like flangy, nasty knife-sounding noises because things aren't right down here. And up here, every once in a while, it just pops out of the nut, no big deal. So you start carving some more to try to get it to stay in. So you're fixing problems with more problems. You're just hacking around. So I got a better bridge, right? First I got the Gato, but I messed that up. Then I moved up to the Gato/Tone Bros locking bridge, which is fantastic, and that was a big upgrade. But now I was jumping out of the saddles here whenever I was playing these high notes. And that's really annoying too. It's just like, what? Jumping out, So that was disturbing. So now I've got to work on getting the height of the bridge correct, which I found out I needed to lift up over on this side. So you unlock the Allen screw, take your screwdriver, and you just kind of lift up until the moment where it's not jumping out of the saddles. That was okay. That actually worked. Locked it down with the Allen screw. It's in position. So the bridge is kind of, instead of being straight across, it's kind of lifted up like that. Very normal thing for a setup. Now, the nut, I think, is a bigger issue. And I'm starting to think it's not my poor setup skills and lack of experience, that I think this rake angle is too extreme. And I've looked at pictures. I don't have a Flying V to look at, at my house. But I think they're in a little bit more. I mean, this just seems like a very, very extreme angle. And I think what would fix it would be a string tree right here. And I don't know for sure. I haven't talked to a professional about it. But I'm starting to think that if I put a string tree here to eliminate the extremeness of this break angle, that would fix it. I think it would kind of look like garbage, and it might cause some other problem that I can't foresee. And if it doesn't work, I've got a hole here that it'll never look quite right. So that's kind of a bummer. And I couldn't get it to intonate with 11 gauge strings on perfectly. It would get close. But between the nut problem, the bridge issue I was having, I started feeling like, and I was starting to go out of tune on the Duesenberg again. So now I'm thinking, I think these strings are just too much for the guitar, which was surprising to me because I use 1152s on my Squiers and never had an issue. They're a little thicker and I've been working on playing with them, but I honestly don't play tons of lead guitar. I kind of use the guitar just to make noise. So my lead guitar playing may be just a bunch of unison bends, like accent moments. So I'm not one of these guys that's like sitting here I would like to be like that, and I want to work on it, and I want to get to be a better player. But my skill level and the kind of music that I write and play, I kind of write with my skill level. And so I come up with things that make sense for what I can do, as opposed to, trying to write things that sound like a shredder and then shredding badly. So I'm not looking for maybe the lowest gauge string and the lowest action, and that's not what I'm looking for yet. That's not how I play. And I'm trying to learn how to play better with higher action, because the guitar sounds so much better with higher action. The notes just ring out better because they're not being choked anywhere on the fretboard. Of course, to get that perfect sounding note, you sacrifice, the ease of playability of a lower setup. Like when I pick up a guitar like my Les Paul Custom, it plays like a dream because it's set up so low. It's got 10 gauge strings on it, so I'm not playing heavy gauge strings with high action on that one, and it feels amazing. But you sacrifice some of this bell-like tone because the strings are, they're, even if they don't seem like they're touching the frets, they're making interaction. When they vibrate, they're hitting those frets, and that's causing the note to die sooner. So the sustain has become my obsession. And like I said, the music that I compose isn't reliant upon me being the fastest, shreddingest player. It's more about the sound. So we all set up our guitars, based on what we are trying to achieve as players and as artists. So I don't have to have it be a shred machine that gets set up low. I like it being set up high. I'm not asking for super low action, but what I am asking is for the break angles to not be so extreme that we get into these types of problems. And I think that might be why it wasn't intonating well. And the last step of this is I've gone down to 10s. I've gone down to 10 gauge. And I have to admit that it does feel better. Feels more reasonable, It's easier to bend notes. Chords sound nice. It bends way easier. So everything is fine, but it just sort of annoys me that I can't put 11s on it and get it to intonate. It's now intonating, finally. But it's close to not intonating properly unless everything is just perfect. And I don't feel like I don't really have anywhere left to go. This is it. It works with the 10s. This rank angle is too extreme. And so there's just little issues in the setup. I also don't know, when they're trying to build these kind of guitars, I don't know where they're getting their specs, They're definitely not Gibson specs. I don't know if they're Jackson specs or Epiphone or whatever. But if any of this is just slightly off, you have issues. So, the next build. I really enjoyed building this guitar. I love the way it looks. It looks great. I haven't played it live yet on stage, but it photographs great. And I've always wanted a Flying V. And I really feel like I learned a lot from the experience. As far as staining the guitar, that really just has put me in a whole nother, mindset as far as guitars and what I want to do with them in the future. I really like having very little finish on the guitar. It just feels like there's a lot more resonance, more sustain. Just feels more natural, to the body and my hands. I love the way this guitar feels. I like the Duesenberg trim, and I think that the company that sold it is a really good company. So if I were to buy something from them, that's BYO Guitar. They seem like honest, nice people, and they sell good stuff, and they do good work. And I really love their wood tone stain. I think they're the only U.S. distributor. I could be mistaken, but I think they're the only ones that you can buy it from, in America. And I love that. So I'm all in on them. And what I would do is, if I was going to use them to build a guitar again, as opposed to the kit, because with the kit thing, you're trying to go bargain basement. You're trying to get the money down. And honestly, the problem with building these kit guitars is the money starts to creep up. Because like I said, I spent a little over $200, But then I replaced the bridge twice. This bridge was like $50, I think, or yeah, it was like 40 something, so it wasn't cheap. The Duesenberg was 100, but this can always go on another guitar, and so can this bridge. The pickups were cheap; they were Guitar Madness, so I didn't spend a ton on those. I upgraded to Bourne mini pots, new knobs, everything, all the wiring, So the cost starts to creep up. You could buy a Gibson for, I could probably have bought a Gibson cherry faded like this one for about $750 to $800, and I've probably put about $550 into this thing. So you see where this is going. You're getting close to the cost of a real Gibson, which has value. I don't think this would sell for anything. It'll never be sold. It'll just be a guitar that I have in my collection. So you have to kind of think about these things as an investment as well sometimes, So my next build, I'm back at my Stratocaster obsession is kicking back in. So I'm going to do something Stratocaster. And I think what I'm going to do is I really like the Stratosphere store that I found on eBay. That's where I got my Gato bridge. And they were quick to order, and seems like they have the best prices on Strat-related builds that I've been able to find. And so he's got a Mighty Mite body that's Swamp Ash. I want a Swamp Ash body. I think it's 2-piece, maybe 3-piece, but it's a lightweight, true Swamp Ash body, Fender license. I know that one's going to be cut to the right dimensions. See where I'm going with this? And then he has an all parts and Mighty Mite, and I believe WD necks that he carries, all of those brands. And those are all Fender licensed. And those range from the price of like $89 on up to the Fender necks that are in the $200-300 range. But would be worth it, because now you would have a Fender licensed guitar that you know for sure that those necks are being built for Fender, so they're going to be correct. The bodies are being routed for Fender or Squier, so you know they're going to be correct. So I have more confidence that way. And with that type of build, instead of buying it as a kit, I'm buying the individual elements that I know that I want. Because honestly, with these kits, basically you end up with good wood if you're lucky, and the rest of it is junk. That's it. So if I was to go back to somebody like BYO Guitar, which is very possible, like I said, I like that company a lot, and I think they're good people. They'll build you a body, they'll do custom work. And it looks like they do really nice custom work. And they also sell licensed bodies as well. I just think the Stratosphere was a little cheaper. But with BYO Guitar, you can customize, and they can build stuff for you. So you could literally have them build you all the parts you need for your Strat build. For instance, for me, I'm going to do some kind of like a vintage classic Stratocaster build, either like a 50s or 60s. I'm not sure if I want the big 50s baseball neck, like the V-shaped profile, or if I want to go for like the 60s thing that's more like a C or a U. And I don't know if I want to go 725 or 95. These are things I'm thinking about, because I like the way the Squier feels, and I really like the way the lead playing feels on a Strat. I actually like the vintage neck profiles. It works for me. Maybe it's the shape of my hands. And once again, like I said, I'm not a super duper lead player anyway. I'm like a rhythm lead player. So that is the direction. And what I'm going to do with that build that's similar to this build is I'm going to get the raw body with Swamp Ash, sand it down to 320, and then use wood tone stain. And I'm thinking wood tone stain with the green Surfer Girl that they sell with silver highlights. I'm just picturing that being absolutely stunning. A 1-ply H-screw white pick guard, and then I don't know if I'm going to go 60s neck or 50s neck. But I like the look of the 50s stuff. I like the 1-ply pick guard. I think that might make it sound a little different when you're playing it acoustically. Don't freak out. I know you won't be able to hear it with the amp or whatever, but just sitting around at home, those kinds of things give me pleasure. So the 1-ply with the H-screw I like. And then, I really like Squier Affinity pickups, and I stumbled into this thread where somebody was saying that ceramic pickup designs that are where they have the pole pieces going down the middle and then the magnet on either side is similar in design to a P90. So maybe that's why I like those. They remind me of like the P94s and the P90 pickups, which they're like the perfect cross between a single coil and a humbucker. You don't lose any of the raggedness of a single coil, or the clarity, or like the dynamic range that you kind of lose with a humbucker, where it gets a little, flat. You don't have any noise and all those kinds of things. And humbuckers can sound very good. I'm not trying to knock on those, but you sort of lose that wild, ragged thing that happens with the P90s. And so I think that those Squier Affinity pickups might be, the reason I might like them is because they sort of resemble a P90 sound. So that's kind of cool. So I might even like rob one of those. I might get like a loaded pick guard with like some Alnico pickups, and then maybe change out the bridge with the Squier. I know that sounds crazy. People think I'm nuts taking out Alnico 5 pickups and putting in cheap Squier, but it's all about the design, because I don't like the Squier bullet pickups, the one where they just have the ceramic pickup in the same position as an Alnico. Those just sound boring. So it's not about the ceramic magnet, it's more about the design. So my recommendation is do your research. Do not get into this until you've really thought it through, because the minute you pick one of these and a little time goes by, you're going to find something else you'd rather do instead. So just take it easy, go slow. If you're into strats, I recommend doing it, on your own without a kit, unless you find some special deal or something and it just makes sense. But I think you can do better on your own. You can get better stuff, and ultimately, can kind of control how you spend the money. Because if you spend a bunch of money on a kit and still have to upgrade all the electronics and everything else, it really wasn't that great of a deal after all. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go strat. I'm going to do it part by part as opposed to a kit, and do the stain, because I think that is the thing that, for me, and I might even shellac the neck. So the little differences I would do is, if I got a raw neck, I would probably use shellac on it. I want to experiment with that, because I've never heard of a neck that's just completely done in shellac. My Squiers, I redo them in shellac, but those are all rosewood, so I want to see what would happen with a maple neck. And then also, my experience with the wood tone stain on this guitar has been so positive, and I really think it has it's a big part of why I like the way this sounds and feels so much. So I want to use that on the guitar as opposed to covering it in poly, and just kind of, I feel like that sort of deadens the wood a little bit for me, not for anyone else. So anyway, thank you so much. Like I said, I think this is a great project, but you have to really go in with eyes wide open and be prepared to work. I mean, I've had this thing now for like 6 months, and I'm just now getting it right. So that's something to keep in mind. And that baking soda super glue trick is incredible. Check out the video on that. There's a really good one that's Dan Arrowine from Stu Mac, and I bet there's some other luthiers who've put up videos on those. Mine isn't that great for instruction, but if you're thinking about doing it, I will talk you into it, I think, by the time you watch the whole thing, because it's so easy to do and it works great. And now that I know about that, I'm going to be much more reluctant to replace nuts that have been filed, too low. So anyway, I hope that my experience has helped you with yours. But I will say that a lot of the fun in building these is the planning. Looking at the kits and thinking about it. Maybe you and somebody else are going to do it together, and you're talking about it, or maybe somebody else is going to build one too. That's really fun. So just take your time with each step. Don't be in a rush to go buy something that you're going to regret later, in other words. So go slow, do your research, read reviews, watch all your videos, go in with eyes wide open so that you don't get disappointed, because I'm a persistent, perfectionist type person. Not everyone's going to want to spend this much time on an instrument getting it dialed in. And I don't have any special skills, and I've learned a lot. But if you're not wanting to spend that much time and effort on it, be careful, because, you got to be careful. You can buy something that you'll never be able to play. It'll never intonate, and it won't play. So you proceed with caution. This stuff ends up, it looks cheaper when you're buying it, because you look at a Gibson and it's like $1,000, or a Fender, $1,000, $2,000, $3,000, whatever it costs, $5,000, who knows? And then you look at one of these finished guitars, and I built this for $500, so it's very tempting. But remember, there are a lot of difficulties, and you can end up getting upside down on the money part of it too if you're not careful. So anyway, build a guitar, have a great time, and I'll see you next time. Thank you.